Hey everybody, this is Mr. Storm. In this video, I'm going to show you how to build your first Replit web page and how to complete the tiny story assignment. This is going to be this video is going to be a bit longer than most, just because I'm going to walk you through every single step by step. After this, you're probably not going to have videos as long as this one. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm here on Replit.com. This is going to be the platform we use to build all of our websites from now on. I'm going to go ahead and click login. I'm clicking login because I already have a login. For you, you'll follow the steps to sign in the article that I provided. So I'm going to click continue with Google, and I'm going to sign in with my UMA Google account. So this is my actual Replit account here. From here, I can create a bunch of different stuff. Now, I use this for a lot of different platforms, not just web development, but also for programming in C#, programming in Java, programming in Python, and there's all kinds of things I use Replit for. It's a great tool. It's actually pretty fun. But for us, we're going to create an HTML, CSS, JavaScript project. So I'm going to click Create here, this big blue plus button. And in this menu here, when I'm looking for templates, I can see I have a bunch of options. My favorites you can see here are C#, HTML, CSS, and Python. But there's tons of other languages down here that I can explore if I really want to later on. For now, I'm just going to choose the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And I'm going to give this a name. The project we're working on is called Tiny Story, so I'm going to make sure I give it a name. You always want to name your REPLs, because by the end of the term, or by the end of this class, you'll have a bunch of unnamed or weirdly named projects, and you won't know where things are. So make sure you name your projects before you start working on them. So I'm going to click Create REPL. And it's going to take a moment. It's going to create my new project. Now, a couple things really quickly. First of all, this little robot that kind of went away, that robot will pop up if you're having issues with this .co extension. This may not mean anything to you right now, but if you are trying to work on your website and for some reason you just can't get the page to pull up, that means this .co extension for some reason is being blocked by the school. Let me know and I'll put in a trouble ticket to see if we can fix it. In the meantime, you can build web pages just like we did last week, where you create a text file and then you build your web page that way. It's not the most convenient. The other option you have is you can find another online web developer. There's plenty of them out there. Replit is my favorite, but it's not the only way you can build websites. There's plenty of other options out there available to you. All right. Or you can just suffer through and then, download your HTML file and then open it up in your web browser manually. That's another way you can do it as well. So the point I'm trying to make is, if Replit isn't working the way you want it to, that doesn't mean you can't work on your assignments. That just means that you have to take a couple of extra steps to get it working. But for most of you, it should work properly. No problems. Okay, let's explore this interface here really quickly. First of all, let's take a look at this files section. By default, these HTML projects, they'll open up an index.html file, a script.js file, and a style.css file. For us, for the first little while, really for this whole first term, we don't need either the script or the style sheet, so we can just delete these files. You don't have to, but it's really there's no reason to have them in your project, because we're focusing strictly on HTML and CSS for this first term, and specifically, we're focusing on internal and inline CSS. External CSS is what we're going to get into next term, so we'll need that CSS sheet, but we don't need it now. So we can get rid of that. Along those same lines, over here we can see in our index, it's already created a bunch of stuff for us. This looks a bit more complicated than what we've built on our own. And the reason for that is because Replit is adding in some other stuff that browsers like to see in a web page. For example, this meta tag inside of the head element, this meta element will basically set the character set for our web page. Also, the name for the viewport that we're using to watch this or view this thing. Anyway, all of this stuff, you don't really need to care about it right now. We'll talk about that later. You can leave it alone. This title right here is essentially what's going to show up whenever your web page opens up in a new tab. So up here, I can see it says tiny story /replit. That is the title for this web page here. All right. So in here, if I was to open up my web page into another tab, it's going to give it a second. It's going to give it a lot of seconds. It's really taking its time loading, huh? Okay. Maybe my .co extension isn't working. Oh well, we'll let that run. Anyway, once that opens, we'll see that we actually have this word replit is going to be up here in this tab. The next thing I have here is this link. Oh, here we go. Can't be reached. All right, so we're having an issue there. Let me go ahead and run my project first and then open it in a new tab, see what happens. It's not working. Anyway, just take my word for it. If we were to open this in an actual browser, we would see replit up there. So we can change that to whatever we want. I usually like to change this to the name of the project that I'm working on. So your title element will allow you to do that. Down here we have this link href style.css rel style sheet type text forward. That we don't really need right now. That is technically a link to the CSS style sheet that we just got rid of. So we can actually delete that entire thing right there. And then down here inside the body, we have some just floating text that's not inside of an element. And we have this script thing here. We can actually get rid of these two things as well because we don't need them. All right, so now inside of the body, this is where I can start designing my story, right? So, like I said before, this story is going to be very small. It's a tiny, tiny story. I'm going to create an H1 right at the top of the page so that I can put in the title of my story, and I'm going to say Mr. Storm's Classroom. And then in paragraph elements, I'm going to start writing my story. Mine's going to be very tiny. Like I said, we do not want a long, long, long story here. One day, I went to Mr. Storm's classroom. He was playing a video game instead of doing his work. I called the cops and he went to jail for the rest of his life. All right, my story is very tiny and very dramatic as well. Apparently I'm going to prison for the rest of my life just for playing video games. Now your story can be much longer than that if you want. I just want to show you the concepts that I'm going to be grading on this project. So as you can see over here, I hit run, and that showed me what my web page is supposed to look like whenever I'm opening it in a browser, but it's a bit boring. Now, so far I've only completed the first requirement for the assignment. The first requirement for the assignment says you must use at least one header, and 3 paragraph elements. So I only have 1 paragraph element. That's not great. I need to actually create some more paragraph elements. So let me do that real quick. I'm just going to take each of these sentences and make them individual paragraph elements. Now, that's easy to do. All I have to do is just make sure I have an end tag and make sure I start my new paragraph elements with an open tag. So now notice that I have an open tag here and a close tag, or an end tag, start tag, end tag. Now, I've done this a couple times so far, so let me clarify. Close tag and open tag and close tag, and then start tag and end tag. I use those terms interchangeably. They mean the same thing. So sorry if that gets confusing. Some days I'll call them open and close. Some days I'll call them start and end. They mean the same thing. So sorry. I've been teaching web development for a long time, and I've tried to break that habit, but it's a really hard habit to break. Okay. So I now have my story. Now notice that when I created those as separate paragraph elements, it's no longer an actual formatted paragraph. Each of these separate sentences is on their own line. That's because paragraph elements will take up the entire line on the web page, right? That's okay, but maybe I don't want it to look that way. Well, we'll talk about how to change that a little bit later in this course. But for now, I've completed the first requirement. You must use at least one header and 3 paragraph elements. I have a header, I have 3 paragraphs. Next, you must format the text in some way. I need to either bold or italicize or superscript or subscript or mark through or whatever. So I'm just going to pick a couple of keywords here, and I'm going to, let's go ahead and let's italicize my name, shall we? So if you remember back to the lesson, to italicize something, I have a couple of ways to do it. I can either use an I, just like this, to italicize, or if I want to emphasize the text, it'll look the same. It'll just be different when the screen readers and the browser takes a look at that code. I always use I for the most part. That's okay. You can use whatever you'd like. All right, I'm going to italicize my name, and then I'm going to bold jail just by using this B tag. Okay, let's go ahead and run that and see what that looks like. So now Mr. Storm is italicized and jail is bolded. All right, cool. So I've met the second requirement for the assignment. I must format the text in some way. All right, now I have to change the background color of the page. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit different. Now, I'm going to use internal styling here, which means I'm going to apply my CSS code up here in my header section. So inside the head, I need to create a style section. And in this style, I can start writing some CSS code. So I want to apply this background color to the entire body of my page. So the selector that I type is going to be called body. Now, inside here, I want to type background hyphen color because that is the thing I want to change on my page. I want to change the background color of my page. And then let's see, I want to find a good, let me find a good color to use for this. I'm going back to the CSS basics lesson. Let me bring this over here real quick so you can see it. Go to the CSS basics lesson. I'm going to scroll down here to colors, and I have a bunch of cool colors here, but I also have this link to 140 standard color names. These are all colors that are recognized by modern web pages. So I'm going to find a really nice color for my background. Now these all look pretty good. Light blue looks nice, slate gray, mint cream, minty rose, Navajo white. Let's see. Let's do like a let's do white smoke. Nah, let's do something a bit more drastic. Let's try light steel blue. Let's try that right there. So I'm going to come back over here, and my background color is light steel blue. Now, notice that I did it lowercase. It wants a capital letter before each new word, but there's no spaces in the name. So I'm going to come back here and just fix that. Light steel blue. Now, if I've done it correctly, then when I run this page, notice that my background color is now light steel blue. Oh, but wait a second. Where did my text go? Well, it's hidden, right? What I did was I created a style element, but I never closed it. And so everything is confused because I did not include an end tag. That's something that can happen if you forget end tags. Make sure you include an end tag or a close tag for elements that need it. So let me run that again. Okay, now we're back in business. Now we're in good shape. I have my background color changed. Everything looks good. All right, so now I've met the third requirement for my assignment. And then number 4 is you must change the color and font of at least one piece of text. Color and font. Let's go ahead and change my H1 here. So again, we can do this in my style section, and I'm going to use my H1 selector so that all of my H1s on my page will change. Now, changing the color of text is easy. We just use the keyword color, and I'm going to change it to white. And then I want to change the font family to something cool. So let's go back over here. I'm going to get rid of that. Let's go to my fonts lesson here. Now we have a bunch of font families that we can choose from. Let's go to our web safe fonts and take a look at some of the fonts we have available. So we have Arial, Verdana, Helvetica, Tahoma, Trebuchet. All of these are great. I actually like Helvetica a lot, so let's go ahead and use that here. So I'm going to go back. Font family equals Helvetica. All right. So let me make sure I spelled that correctly. It looks like it. Okay. So now whenever I run my page, my H1 should change to white, and then it should change the font to a sans serif font. I also want a fallback though, so I'm going to do that as well. So that way I have a fallback. If we look here, let's see. Yeah, fallback fonts. So notice that I can indicate which fonts I want, but then the last one here is just sans serif. That just means it'll change it to any sans serif font if it doesn't recognize the font that I typed. And I'm going to get rid of the quotes. The quotes are really only needed if your font has more than one word in it, like Times New Roman. Then you would use quotes, but I don't need them for this. So I'm going to go ahead and run it and see what happens. Okay, cool. So now my header has changed colors. It's white, and now it has a sans serif font up top. So at this point, I've completed all of the requirements for this assignment. I'm going to go ahead and turn this in. Now, again, you guys don't have to stop here. Once you meet the requirements for the assignment, keep going. Write some more of your story, make some more changes to the text, play around with CSS a little bit. That's fine. But I'm done here. I'm going to go ahead and click Invite, and then generate a join link. And then I will copy this here, Control-C to copy. And I'm going to go back into Canvas and then turn in this project by clicking Start Assignment and then pasting this link into the website URL box and hitting Submit. Okay, so that is the entire process to complete this assignment. Hopefully this was enlightening. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you next time.